Jesus was the firstborn from the dead. Alright, this is kind of an odd phrase, so what does this even mean? Well, the best way to answer that question is to let the Bible interpret itself. So let's look at 1 Corinthians 15, verse 20 to 23, and hopefully we'll be able to get some answers. But now Christ is risen from the dead, and has become the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep. For since by man came death, by man also came the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die, even so in Christ all shall be made alive, but each one in his own order, Christ the firstfruits, and afterward those who are Christ at his coming. Did that help clear things up? If not, let me try to unpack it a little bit. So, because Jesus Christ raised from the dead, all who have died can now also be raised from the dead. Now, all my Bible scholars are probably saying, well, Jesus technically wasn't the first one to rise from the dead. And you'd be correct. Jesus was not the first person to be resurrected or raised from the dead. So what makes Jesus' resurrection so special? Well, as we discussed previously, humanity required a substitutionary sacrifice in order to pay the penalty for their sin. All who have sinned will require a sacrifice in order to be redeemed. That is why when you read about the qualifications of a sacrificial animal, it will read something like, your lamb shall be without blemish or without spot, without deformity. That is meant to symbolize being without fault or being perfect. A flawed sacrifice cannot be used to redeem a flawed person. Only a perfect sacrifice can be used to redeem the flawed. In other words, what set Jesus apart from any other human who ever lived on this earth was the fact that he was perfect. He was spotless. He was sinless. He was without fault. And because of that, he was the only one that could qualify to be our sacrifice and redemption. What makes Jesus' death unique and remarkable is that, unlike everyone else, he did not deserve to die. Jesus died in order to be our substitutionary sacrifice. And because he was perfect and blameless, he was accepted as our sacrifice. And because he did not deserve to die, his life was returned to him. And because his sacrifice was accepted, now all those who die can also be resurrected to life as well. But if you recall what was said in 1 Corinthians 15, it said, but each one in his own order, Christ the firstfruits, afterward those who are Christ at his coming. In other words, the resurrection that is being spoken of here is the resurrection that will occur at the second coming of Christ, where all who have died in Christ will be resurrected and will be reunited with God. So, Christ being the firstborn from the dead means that the only hope that we have to be resurrected from the dead and be reunited with God is through Jesus, who laid down his life for us as a sacrifice to pay the penalty for our sin. And God found his sacrifice to be acceptable, therefore raised him from the dead. And because Jesus was raised from the dead, all who are in him can be raised, not just to life again, but to life everlasting. Jesus lived to show me how to live. Jesus died to pay for my failure, to live like him. But Jesus was resurrected so that even though I failed to live like him, through his sacrifice and God's grace and mercy, I can be reborn from the dead to live with him. And as always, think on these things.